When you're talking about extraterrestrial civilizations, you have to forget what you've been taught about how science works. Every single person is in reality a portal into the unbounded universe. The central operating system of the universe is consciousness. It's not magic if you understand this new science. And when you look at the head of this being and also the Atacama humanoid, which by the way is ET, if you look from the eyes up to the top of the head, the proportional amount of cranial vault is around 3 times ours. I want to take all of you into a journey in the understanding of consciousness, interstellar contact, transdimensional physics, and a glimpse into the future. And my objective is really to do this in a way that by the time you leave Sunday, if you listen carefully and practice the protocols that will be shared, you'll be able to form your own ambassador to the universe group wherever you live, and be a true ambassador in consciousness to these civilizations. The reason that's so important is, first, there's nobody else doing it. There's nobody else doing it. The Secretary of State isn't. The UN Secretary General isn't. Who's doing this? So the people of Earth are doing it. And now we have thousands of teams all over the world doing close encounters of the fifth kind, using the understanding of higher states of consciousness and the reality that primacy rests with the mind, with consciousness, that everything emanates from that field that is a unlimited field of pure consciousness, that all of space and time and matter is actually the stuff of consciousness phasing and resonating as that thing. And this has actually been proven scientifically. Some years ago, before I started this organization, there was a physics group that was doing an experiment with photons. And this was reported in Newsweek and Time, all the lamestream media. And they reported, and it was reproducible, that as they tracked a photon going down a tube to an opening, that as they moved the aperture or the opening, the photons would precognitively change course in anticipation of the next movement. How is this possible? So even the behavior of photons, subatomic particles, matter, our bodies, all of it is wired into this infinite network of pure conscious intelligence. And so it's no longer something that's only the realm of the mystics and what have you. It's also the realm of the most advanced science going on the planet today, and has been going on for a long time. What we're doing is taking that science of consciousness and the ancient knowledge of awareness from the ancient Vedic era that predates any known human civilization, by the way, and using the science of consciousness and the deep meditative state to go into non-local awareness, expanded consciousness, so that we can not only be centered in that field of pure consciousness and act from there, but also it becomes an operating system. The central operating system of the universe is consciousness. And so as we get to this understanding, we can then become ambassadors to these civilizations, because they're not just using one of these things. 1844, let me give you that date. First telegraph sent. By the way, turn off your phones if you have them on. This is 1844 technology. It's at the speed of light, it's electromagnetic fields, and it's very old. Now, it's kind of cool, and it's been miniaturized from the telegraph and the early telephones, but it's old, basic science. What we're going to talk about from now until Sunday night at 6 o'clock are the sciences that are actually already extant. They exist, that have been suppressed, and the knowledge that's been suppressed through the high priests of our society, whether they be scientific, corporate, governmental, religious, whatever they are, because they really don't want people to know that every single person is in reality a portal into the unbounded universe. And there's a wonderful saying from the ancient Persian tradition, thinkest thyself a puny form when within the universe is folded? It's a rhetorical question. The entire universe and multiverse is folded like a quantum holographic conscious entity within every single person, every sentient person. And every point in space and time is accessible instantly to any other point in space and time by nature of consciousness, the mind. Now, most of the time, we keep ourselves fixated on ourselves, our bodies, and our immediate environment. But even when we're in that state, there's a deeper aspect of our consciousness that knows and is connected to this larger unbounded reality. For example, a few hours before 9/11, the random number generators that were running did this massive exponential spike right before that happened, because there was a disturbance precognitively in the force, because we all felt it one way or another, the deeper aspect. This has been proven over and over and over again in scientific, reproducible experiments. Back in the 1990s, I had a conversation with a brilliant man at Princeton named Dr. Bob John at the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, and he basically said, what we're doing out under the stars is what he's been able to prove is the reality in engineering systems with random number generators, which are basically machines that spit out ones or zeros in what would normally be a 50-50 distribution randomly, but that when you put your attention on them, you can shift it to ones or zeros. We're going to get more into this, and this has been reproducible multiple places. This is not junk science at all, and it has proved the non-locality of mind and how thought can affect an inanimate object, a random number generator. There are literally hundreds of experiments like that that have been done over the last few decades, and yet this isn't what we're teaching our children. We're teaching them that they're, or even our PhD students, about physics and neurobiology. We're teaching them an old reductionist paradigm that actually has expired and been replaced by this larger understanding of reality, of what the true reality is, and that is we live in a conscious, aware universe, and as sentient beings, we can become aware of just the quiet, pure state of awareness. And from that quiet, centered space, open up intentionally, even as an individual, to see remote places, remote times, distant planets, other galaxies, other civilizations. Back in 1991, about a year after I founded the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, I wrote a paper called The Comprehensive Assessment of the UFO Extraterrestrial Subject. And it's in the first book that I published in 1999, which some of you have read. Actually, I found most people don't read. It's all boob tube. I mean YouTube. But which is great. I mean, but there's some value to being able to be literate and read. I do recommend learning how to read. Yeah, you'll see some running commentary through my presentation. But in this, this paper, so it was a white paper, a position paper, and in it I describe something called consciousness-assisted technology. So you have a device like this, and instead of having to physically touch it, you think to it. You think to it. And it then can absorb and transmit with perfect accuracy to another star system, galaxy, what have you, in real time. Because there's no delay when you're using the field of consciousness and thought. What's the speed of thought? It's instantaneous. What's the field of consciousness? It's omnipresent. And this has been proven in physics and science. Therefore, when you're talking about extraterrestrial civilizations, you have to forget what you've been taught about how science works and how societies operate. So you kind of have to crash the understanding. You have to bring it back to zero and rebuild it in a new paradigm. And the new paradigm is one that is centered in the understanding of the science of consciousness, thought, non-locality in physics, which means that, it was funny because Einstein discovered that there could be, had something he called the spooky effect, where there'd be the observation of a particle in two places at the same time, which is not supposed to be possible. And he was spooky to him. There's nothing spooky about it if you understand non-locality in physics, which we're going to deal with a great deal this weekend. And ultimately, this gives you an understanding of why, as an ambassador to these other civilizations, you have to have first mastered a paradigm and an understanding, ironically, of inner space before you can comprehend outer space. Because outer space it's real, and you can go and look at the stars, and at the speed of light, it does take 2.5 million years to get light to the Andromeda galaxy, which is 2.5 million light years away. So within that realm of physics, all those laws of physics apply. But there are other aspects that are transdimensional and conscious aspects of even the 3D universe, which have now been proven, which you have to also understand and master if you're going to be an ambassador to contact these civilizations, or have a scintilla of understanding of how they contact you and how the phenomenon might appear. What if they start suddenly to take your cell phone, and all of a sudden an extraterrestrial sphere, a metallic sphere, appears in the image of it? This has happened. We have a team in New York, and a wonderful woman, and she had just a regular cell phone. She had read the book Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge, which was sort of my autobiography about all this and the experiences I've had. And her phone suddenly turned on, lit up, and here was this extraterrestrial sphere, metallic sphere in it. And she went, "What is this?" And I actually contacted the phone company. They had no explanation. Then she tried to ignore it. She said, "This is impossible. This can't be." Then it happened again. And then she was at her dentist's office, and suddenly the CSETI tones that we project out into space, the beep-boo, 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 started going over the loudspeaker system or the music system in the dentist's office, exactly out of the CSETI protocols, and the dentist comes out and says, "What is going on? It sounds like a spaceship is landing." It was then that she realized she probably ought to come to one of these week-long expeditions and really learn about what's going on. And she did, and then she since has formed this huge group in New York that is doing this on a monthly basis. And the ways that these civilizations can appear and manifest doesn't have to be a Hollywood movie. It usually is not. And so you have to begin to understand, if you're dealing with civilizations that are interstellar, their paradigm is also transdimensional and conscious. And by transdimensional, I mean not just 3D, but all the dimensions that exist in the cosmos, up to and including the unbounded field of cosmic mind, the unperturbed still, centered state of cosmic awareness. Because that is the central operating system for not only understanding how to traverse the cosmos, but also technologically how to even communicate and travel across these distances of space. So here's something that most people don't think of. If they are here, and it's not something made by Lockheed Martin up here at the Lockheed Skunk Works, in other words, it's something that's truly interstellar. It is also transdimensional. It can go from a star system in a galaxy 1,000,000 light years away, go through a resonance field shift, frequency, harmonics. The technology is pretty well known now how this happens. Quote, unquote, dematerialize, and all that means is that it's just shifted out of linear 3D, and the speed of the atoms and the electrons and everything shifts, and the angular momentum and spin changes. So it just disappears. It could be hovering in this room and disappear right in front of your eyes, which is what we see all the time when we go out in the desert or wherever. And then appear at another galaxy, not at the speed of light or the speed of the space shuttle, God help us, but almost at the speed of thought. We'll get into why it's not quite. There's a coefficient of drag when there's still a connection to the underbelly of linear space-time in what's been called the near astral, like your light body. So these civilizations understand this, and if you're going to be someone to take the place of the sociopaths and psychopaths who have made this subject secret and tried to weaponize space and militarize our relationship with these civilizations, you can't do it from the linear paradigm that is a materialist, reductionist paradigm. You at least have to begin to understand how these civilizations are operating and how they know reality. And the beautiful thing about it is, read the book of your own soul. Read the book of your own self, and you'll know. It's all folded within you. The entirety of the cosmos and all these dimensions are folded within like a quantum hologram that's conscious inside every single human being and every single sentient being. I'll take it a step further. It's actually folded within every point in space and time, and every grain of sand has within it all of these folded in, because it's an infinity within infinity within infinity. I hope this isn't too confusing, where this is like the beginning. Just wait till Sunday. So I'm trying to give you an idea of what the task is for us, to go from what I call our current understanding of reality and our civilization's deliberate miseducation of us, to an understanding that begins to be able to approach what any interstellar civilization has to have mastered in order to become interstellar, transdimensional and interstellar. Because it's one thing to study this thing as sort of a UFOlogist. I don't know what that is really. But if you're actually going to go beyond collecting retrospective case reports, of which there are hundreds of thousands, we don't need really any more of them, and do something that is forward-looking and take the responsibility to be a human who's developing a relationship with these civilizations because our governments have failed us. And it's now our turn, our time as the public to step into this role. You have to understand all of this. So while a lot of what will be shared this weekend may seem pretty advanced, it's really elementary. It's really the basis for being able to operate as someone out under the stars with a team of people, engaging in the close encounters of the fifth kind, which is when humans initiate or cooperate with the contact experience in a program. The Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind program requires us taking responsibility for ourselves and our planet and not looking to the next president of the United States to do this for us. I've lived through Papa Bush, we're doing this actively, Papa Bush, Clinton 1, Clinton 2, Baby Bush 1, Baby Bush 2, Obama 1, and Obama 2. And I won't bore you with all the things that I've dealt with from one administration to the next. What I can tell you is the likelihood that these governmental bodies will do anything useful is not very high unless we, the people, lead. And moreover, create this so-called morphogenic field effect that Rupert Sheldrake talks about, this sort of effect within the field of consciousness. Because when a certain number of people begin to do something, it actually causes a shift in the thinking and awareness and potentiation of everyone on the planet. I'll take it one more step, of everyone in the cosmos. Because if we're truly talking about non-locality, where every point in space and time is instantly connected through this conscious field and other dimensions to every other point in space and time, then there is no separation in space or time. And since there's no separation, whatever we are doing can actually be picked up and felt by every planet, every dimension, and every galaxy, because there is no linear barrier. Now, this begins to really unveil how profound the understanding of consciousness is in the work and the task we have at hand. Because this is the generation living today on this planet that has to go from a very primitive, and as Michio Kaku says, a level 0 civilization that's destructive to the planet, still having wars, destroying the biosphere, to a level 1, 2, 3, 4 civilization on up in a relatively short amount of time. And in fact, it is recovering the lost century, because most of this information I'm sharing was known 100 years ago, even technologically. Maybe not down to the granular level of physics, but certainly in terms of experimental data going back over 100 years. And we don't have another 100 years to fritter away with endless war and a paradigm of energy that destroys the planet, but more importantly, a paradigm of consciousness of separation. We have to get into a consciousness of interconnectivity that is both real and manifest, but also understood through the experience of the deep aspect of our own conscious mind. You know, Erwin Schrödinger, the father of particle wave theory, it became the basis for quantum mechanics, said in, I believe it was 1908, you can Google it and look it up, early part of the century, the total number of minds in the universe is one. That is, it's a singularity. Now that was 108, 10 years ago, whatever. And he was a scientist, and not a mystic. And so when you look at this, you realize, wow, I mean, those of us, you know, on Earth today have somehow been deceived, not just about the nature of the fact that there's intelligent life out there visiting this planet, and the sciences and technologies that have been studied and reverse engineered that could get us off oil, gas, coal, nuclear power, surface roads, highways, those of you who drove out of LA, my condolences, or whatever. But also then this profound, deep knowledge of consciousness and the science of the mind and consciousness that is the foundation of understanding not only ourselves, but living together in peace. Now, why do I say that? Well, the consciousness of separation allows for an infinite number of conflicts. Us versus them, white versus black, gay versus straight, west versus east, Shia versus Sunni, Hindu versus Muslim, on and on and on and on. However, the experience and knowledge of this state of who and what we really are, which transcends all these fracture lines of our culture that have built up over thousands of years, is something that then heals all those fractures, transcends them, and will allow us to relate to one another in a way that transcends separation into this state of the all and oneness. Now, this is really important because, humans are still on this earth fighting over every kind of trivial ism. Capitalism versus this, liberalism versus the, it's isms and isms and isms and isms and this ism and another ism. And it's not just economic, it's religious, it's everything. Now imagine if we then are tasked with dealing with in a way that is not separate and therefore fractured and prone to conflict, civilizations that aren't even Homo sapien. They're not human. What is the point of commonality? This is a profound question. Because world peace is so late 1800s, I kind of want to vomit through my eyeballs. I mean, that really belonged to, that should have been established between the late 1800s and early 1900s. We need to be thinking of universal peace. Because we're being visited, they're expecting us to join an interplanetary community and have been asking us to do so for quite some time, these extraterrestrial civilizations. And we have dropped the ball one generation after another for over 100 years. And it's for that reason the earth is weeping. Because it's not just the problem of the environment, it's the deep consciousness level of what is the basis of our destruction of the planet, which is rooted in the consciousness of separation and destruction. And so if we begin to contemplate interfacing with an extraterrestrial life form or a civilization from another planet, and we begin to have all the pattern triggers of racism or interspecies fear and loathing that has been built up for thousands of years, and we then project that on the experience with these civilizations, there's only one outcome: war, conflict. But there's another way of doing this, and that is understanding that the light of consciousness radiating from the eye of that extraterrestrial life form and the mind and the sentient and the light of awareness within ourselves is a singularity. That's your point of contact. Think about it. They're not going to have our IQ, I hope not. They're not going to have necessarily all of our biogenetic legacy, although there may be some that's shared, although 98% of ours is identical with chimpanzees. The other 2% is an interesting discussion. We may get into that. I'm sure I'll offend every religious person in the world. But then, shall I? Yeah. All right, we'll get there. It's early yet. But we're going to have to also consider the internal universe, our emotional nature. There's a lot of difference even on Earth between someone who grew up in the culture of Japan and Sicily. Would you agree? I mean, there's a range of intellectual, emotional, behavioral amongst humans, and we're one species. So now extrapolate that amount of difference and diversity into another planetary civilization, and then into thousands of them, and then into millions of them, which really do exist. You're not going to be able to handle this overwhelming differentness, otherness, unless you're able to connect on a deeper and more profound level. Some would call it deep evolutionary spirituality, of deep consciousness. Because if you understand and begin to experience that in the meditative state in your daily life, then they're no longer are they aliens, which is a word I loathe hearing. I like the word ET better because alien connotes foreign, other. So I just erase the A word, if you will, because words are powerful. Never within my earshot use the word alien. But it just means, it conveys in consciousness in the words and the consciousness behind the word, separation. This is why I don't like the word. And we want to be able to then think, well, how are we going to relate to these other civilizations? There's one contact event we had up here in Joshua Tree National Park, which is right up there, with a E.T., the picture of whom some of you have seen. I'm going to show it this week and really go drill down deep in how that happened and how that experience happened. And it's an interstellar ambassador from the Andromeda Galaxy. And when we were asking, what is your, I asked, intelligence and level, and I had one of these very sensitive magnetic field meters on, and I went through and I was thinking, well, genius on our scale is 160, average is like 110, a standard deviation or so is around 10 points or 15 points. And I got to 200, nothing, 300, nothing, 400, 450. So this particular being, and so cruise around with an IQ around 450 and the equivalence of human intelligence, IQ, which means I'm a moron. I mean, really. But that didn't intimidate me, because I thought, well, that's true. And when you look at the head of this being, and also the Atacama humanoid, which by the way is ET, if you look from the eyes up to the top of the head, the proportional amount of cranial vault is around 3 times ours. And that's just the truth. So we're having to then think, well, how are we going to relate to a civilization whose occupants have IQs double our geniuses or triple our geniuses, and whose sciences and technologies are all dealing with thought consciousness switches, and guidance systems on the craft are all connected on that level too, by the way. And moreover, the spacecraft themselves are nano-bio machines that have AI, artificial intelligence, to the point of self-awareness that is a replica of the consciousness, mind-melded, of the occupants. Anyone who's had a very close encounter with one of these craft will tell you that they could feel it was looking at them. It was conscious, it was aware of them. Not just the occupants, but the craft itself was almost a projection of the consciousness of the occupants. Cool, huh? All right, it's not like a 747 floating across the sky, or even one of Lockheed Martin's or Northrop Grumman's anti-gravity things floating across the desert, which we have seen. So now we're talking about how a relatability, what is the basis for a relationship? So all of us are humans, and we have varying degrees of success with interpersonal relationships. Some better than others. Some are more functional and some are more dysfunctional. However, we can relate, mostly. When we're talking about civilizations like this, how are we going to relate? Well, it's easy, because it's the basis of our being is the fact that we are conscious and we are sentient. And they are conscious and they are sentient. And I know this sounds terribly simple, but it's actually the reality, because if you connect to that level, it doesn't matter how much difference there is if you're connecting to the unitary state of consciousness, which is why the experience of this deep, quiet state of consciousness that's transcendent, that's within us and within all things, and that level of connectedness, samadhi, isn't just a pursuit for people who want to be ascetic sitting in a cave. It's now the prerequisite of us becoming a global and interplanetary civilization. So that's why this entire area of consciousness and science is, oh, well, I didn't even turn that on. How odd. Well, they're saying yes, you're right. That's what happens, actually. We're going to get into the at the CIA, they call this stuff WSFM. It's not a radio station. It stands for Weird Science and Frickin' Magic. It does. And my uncle's old company, Northrop Grumman, they just call it PFM, Pure Effin' Magic. And I know the engineers there. And but it's not magic if you understand this new science. It's actually completely understandable.